Welcome to the Great Noticing Podcast with Marianne and Emily.
The Great Noticing is about our awakening as people, professionals, parents, and leaders. Noticing empowers us to unravel the old narratives that dominated and defined us.
Noticing supports new patterns and celebrates behaviors that help us create and step into the life we desire. What are you noticing lately?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Great Noticing. I'm Marianne Means Dufresne, and my co-host Emily can't join us today, but she will be here in spirit, adding all the levity, of course, because we have fantastic guests today. We've got Melissa and Jamey Ice, both incredible leaders and entrepreneurs here in Fort Worth, Texas, leaders in their own right, but also an incredible power couple together. And so Jamey and Melissa, thank you guys both so much for joining us on The Great Noticing today.
For sure. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for having us, friend.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I've known you guys for so long. And also, Jamey, you have an incredible podcast, Stories with Soul. So you know this. Maybe you could give me some tips on podcasting as we go along. And we're just going to have a fun conversation. Want to hear from you, maybe, Melissa, kick us off with what you've been noticing lately.
Goodness, I think the thing that I have been noticing recently is just a desire to slow down. And I think there's something about growing a thing, which Jamey and I both have grown several things. And now for my organization, I'm in my 13th year, which is crazy to think about. It's my first child. I have two other ones. And yeah, I mean, I'm just like raising a kiddo. It's a lot of work. It takes all of your energy, your time, your heart, which is what it needs, right? To flourish, thrive, survive, become a thing. And at the same time, that can often be, and I'm thinking of like parental metaphors, but at the expense of ourselves. And so I think right now I'm just noticing that what works for me at a certain season may not always work for me or may not work for me in the future. And I'm just trying to dig a little deeper into what are those longings, what are those desires, and listening to my body, listening to, just things that pop up that I think, 5 years ago, I would have just swept it away and been like, that's not for me. That's a message for somebody else. I've got things to do. I think I'm just noticing that what used to work for me may not always work. And also being okay with my limitations and just noticing my limitations, sitting with them, naming them, not necessarily doing anything, but just, noticing it's okay to have limits.
And I'm thinking about your work with The Net, your anti-sex trafficking nonprofit, and Worthy Co., your social enterprise that supports the efforts of The Net. And that kind of heart-led, heartfelt work can really overtake your life. And so I can imagine what you're bringing up around how to pace yourself is really a huge part of being able to sustain the work. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you get into the mindset, or I get into the mindset, the stakes are high. And so that can sort of be the lens of seeing everything and then often even dismissing things because the stakes are too high to consider alternatives to whatever fill in the blank situation. And so I am looking forward to a pace that is sustainable, both for me, my family, my marriage, and the health of my team, and leading out in front of other people. What does it look like to live out in a really healthy pace? I'm not on the other side. There's no bow on that. It's definitely just what I'm noticing and sort of naming it and sitting with it.
Well, and the courage to say, and we've talked about the hustle culture mentality, and I certainly feel that too, and that there was a push toward that. And maybe that's a time in life. Maybe there's always been something like a hustle culture that different generations have gone through, but it's also push to burnout is really what it is. And I know you just took a sabbatical for the first time in 13 years, and you guys have young girls. What do you hope that your daughters are seeing in your desire to really set healthy limits on this?
Gosh, for me, I think what I want them to see is just to always be living out of their values. And I think that it's really easy to swim downstream. And sometimes culture predetermines what your values are for you. Or honestly, you can have values and then you look at your calendar, you're like, my calendar says something different. It's telling me a different story. Or, my bank account is telling me that this is actually what I value because it's where I spend my time and money. And so I think what I'm trying to do in this season is just reflect on that. And then for them, having them do the exact same thing. They're not in as many activities this semester, as an example, but some of the things that they were communicating to us over the summer is just really loving family time and wanting more time. Well, then when signups come and we don't do that, we can revisit those conversations and say, hey, it seems like some of the things that you shared with me that seem like you value is time together. Well, it's hard to do that when we're doing X, Y, and Z. And so maybe we're going to do a little bit less so that we can be together more. So I don't know how it's all translating with the 6 and 9-year-old, but
Yeah, it's so interesting because there's an element like we at dinner, when we have dinner and sit down, and sometimes it's like, here's the food, go. Other times we sit down, and when we do, we do this sort of exercise. We call it high-low buffalo. What's your high, what's your low? Buffalo is like a funny thing. I don't even know where that came from, but that's what we call it. And they go around, and lately I've been in a hard season, probably since February-ish. And so I've been like, Daddy had to do, had hard things at his work. He's had to fire people. And it just is like completely over their heads, which I think is like good. You want them to not have the worries and the cares of the world. At the same time, I also want them to like, understand what does it mean to like be a leader? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to have a business? And so there's this weird, like trying to be vulnerable, trying to teach, here's a lesson. I want to teach you things that are going on. Yeah. But then also like completely goes over their heads. But maybe, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they should or they shouldn't, or we should say or shouldn't say. I just drove with my mom to Santa Fe this past weekend. Yeah. And she was talking about, both my parents were in the oil business. And she was talking about when we were around my kid's age, like my dad lost his job because the oil market crashed. And I have no recollection of that. Wow. And she was just talking about how hard it was and how they didn't have any money and how stressful it was. And so it's this balance of, I want to teach kids about being an owner and being a leader. And I want them to kind of have this mindset that I think me and Melissa have, that it's very much part of our relationship. But there's also like, I don't think it's going to click for a while.
Like what can they handle? I had an experience recently and that I'll tell you about in a second. But Jamey, first, tell us a little bit about Ave Homes. So it's now basically a conglomerate. There are so many different functions that your organization does. You were Entrepreneur of the Year last year. So give us kind of the high-level overview of what you're stepping into these days.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of different things, but the past few years, I have 6 Ave Homes, which is a real estate company. So we help people buy and sell and design and renovate. We have 70 real estate agents. We do construction, we do design, we do floor plans, we do pools. And then I have another company called 6 Ave Storytelling. And so they're kind of sister companies. 6 Ave Storytelling works with entrepreneurs and local and small businesses. It's a marketing agency to help them grow and tell their stories. I've spent most of my time, probably 70% of my time the past few years, at storytelling. I have a really great leadership team in place at Homes. So juggling 2 very different things under the same building and kind of same operational structure, which is hard. And I think, part of what you're talking about earlier about this hustle culture and about is I think I have this superpower of I like to hustle. Like hustle culture is good and it's bad, but it's like, what do I love to do? I like to freaking work hard and create things and start things. Yeah. And then I had this vision of creating these big things. And then like, here I am with these big things, a lot of employees. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I hate this. Why do I want this?
Say that on a podcast.
You can absolutely say that.
Yeah, like it's almost like Icarus getting too close to the sun. And it's like, now I've built this complicated ecosystem and dealing with managing people and their livelihoods and their families' livelihoods. And so it just gets really complicated. And then here, my default is go, 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 build, build, build. And then at the same time, I'm like, whoa, this is a lot of plates to be spinning. And then when something falls off the track a little bit, it's hard. And so I think both of us, me and Melissa, are in a place of like wanting more simplicity, wanting a little less. Like I still like to go, but I'm also like, man, I'm craving a bit more simplicity. And so this balance of like, I like the hustle. I kind of like hustle culture. Sign me up for hustle culture. But I'm also like, what's that?
Worry. Yeah. Well, when you spoke to, flying too close to the sun, is the strength in the shadow of the fire that burns in us. And for both of you to have the visionary capacity of saying, here's what's possible, the energy to push it forward. And then the difficulty, and I'll speak for myself, is sustaining that over time.
Yeah.
And you got to scale, right? So you got to build the system. And then you're stuck in this, exactly to your point, Jamie, what have I built? And actually the pressure of building business to provide for people. Melissa, for you, building an organization that saves people's lives. And then that's where, to me, nothing but faith and nothing but God stepping into that space can solve this stuff.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think too, that's why I keep going back to this idea of limitations, which is funny because, people do like a word of the year. And I don't always do that, but it's something that I'm just trying to sit with, be okay with. I think as leaders, especially founders, we can be a little, it's our baby. And it's hard to exit things. It's hard to delegate things. It's hard to bring people in to essentially replace you a little bit so that you can have a pace that is sustainable or whatever that looks like. And just getting comfortable with your limitations. But to your point, so often I feel like I find myself when I start to feel the anxiety of feeling that shouldering the weight of there's too many things that are going on at once. The only thing that truly outside of, some breathing and grounding exercises is just reminding myself that I wasn't meant to carry that. I wasn't meant to shoulder the full weight of everything and people. And for me, the ladies and the donors and the impact. But instead, I feel like there's always a little whisper invitation from God saying, yeah, give some of that to me. I can handle all of this. Clearly you can't. And so I think that's also just sort of being okay with recognizing, oh, I'm trying to be the savior here. I'm trying to swoop in and do more than what's humanly possible. And there's a sweet invitation to hand off some things that I wasn't meant to carry.
Absolutely. The acceptance of that, which I think the word limits or limitations is such an interesting word to choose. I adore it. Most people are like, limitless. But that saves me on day in, day out as I'm a vessel. Like I'm being given this energy and even the acceptance of, I love to start things, not that great at finishing it. I've always shows up in my profiles, like when you do leadership development and these things. And I've always been like, I'm going to fix that, and it's like, actually, no, because I'm meant to start this new stuff. I'm meant to create a vision of something. And that means I need people. I need community. That's why the team is important, so that they're able to step in and do what they do well. And that's the whole other piece of leadership that I've worked with people as an executive coach and talked about how difficult it is to, exactly to your point, Melissa, delegate. And because there's some ego in there. If I'm handing this off, then am I less important? Or what's my space? What's my role? And we all have that time of transition, but it's really about the gift that we get to give to people on our team and in our environment to be a part of something bigger and to do things that they do really well. And we all know how we feel when we get to do what we do best.
When you're flying in your lane and you can go hard and fast because you're not being dragged into the weeds and other things.
That's right. It's empowering.
It really is. You'd think we would do it more often.
But it's us holding ourselves back, I think. And that whole can't see the forest for the trees kind of thing. But Jamey, how have you experienced this with your team? Because you've now built 2 teams.
I mean, in terms of the limit, like, is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, acknowledging where our abilities fall short and where we have the opportunity to empower our team.
I feel like the older you get, the more self-aware you are. Here's my strengths. Here's my weaknesses. The challenge is also like sometimes you don't have a choice but to not operate. Like, 'cause I can relate to you. Like my superpower is taking the plane off. I am not great at flying the plane.
Yeah.
But sometimes like, man, I gotta fly the plane. And so I think that's the hardest part of it is the empowering, the delegating, the managing. And I am typically a Tarzan manager. I like swing in. I'm like, here's where we're going. And I swing out and they're like, where did he just go? He said, move the mountain. But it's like, what mountain? How far do you want to move it? When do you want to move it? What direction you want to move it? And I'm like, I don't know, just move the mountain. Here's where we're going.
Yes.
And so I'm like the bodybuilder with big arms and skinny legs. That's definitely my skinny legs. But also it's like, dude, I don't know that I'm made to do that. I'm not. I need people to help with that. I think also part of like, man, the simplicity is finding the element that you're good at, which is easier said than done, especially when you're wearing a lot of hats.
And when your business isn't to the point where you can hand things off yet. I mean, the last few years for me, I had to discipline myself to finish the project, to get
Yeah.
there and build something out myself so that I could then have a template that when it was time, I could train people to do it. And that's part of being younger too. Like I remember the feeling of, man, my talent, in my 30s, my talents are not being used and I can do so much more. But that's part of the path is the honing our skill and humbling ourselves to be in the spot that we are in and still keep believing, yes, there's more. That's hard to do. And for you, Jamey, to have started off as a rock star and then to now be entrepreneur, businessman, getting it all done, how do you weave music back into your daily life?
I mean, there's not a lot of music in the daily life.
Except girls, I bet there's like music and dancing and
Yeah, except the girls. And I do like a little music education with dad on the way to school. On the way to school, either I choose an artist of the week or a couple of artists of the week. Today, I introduced them to Dave Matthews Band,
okay.
which is kind of fun. So either like I'm playing music, having a teacher about this. We've gone through like Green Day to Louis Armstrong to Elvis to Madonna to Outkast to the Beatles. Like I just played them the Cranberries, and they like
Oh, they love the
resonated
Cranberries.
They resonated with the Cranberries.
Okay.
But I either will like play that or like on the way to school, I'll play them the audiobook of The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. It's like these little,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I will pay them $0.25 if they can explain what they just said. Long story short, that's probably my music. I haven't played guitar since like we did a show like a year ago or so, but it's not a part. I spent so long doing that, and it's just not the season I'm in now. I miss it a little bit. I still appreciate it, but it's like it's not my current world. And even like I was probably not a true artist. Like there are folks who like live and like singer of our band Josh is like an artist. He like feels it. It is and I was always like the go marketing, branding. How do we get this? How do we get people like I loved the business side of it. And I was a good entertainer and I was a pretty good guitar player, but in my core, I was probably more the driver business side of it. Like that's what gets me going is the building and growing, probably more than like the music stuff, which I know that sounds sad.
To have a successful band or organization, you've got to have people that really allow themselves to be pulled into their strength areas. And you're paying attention to the stuff that makes your heart beat fast. No.
Well, and at the same time, you're like, there's probably all these amazing artists who are phenomenal, but nobody knows who they are because they need that business person, that marketing person to get them out into the universe.
And so, Jamey, we heard from you on some of your practices with the girls. Melissa, what foil do you play or how do you balance out some of Jamey's educational norms that he's bringing to the girls?
With the girls, actually, we were talking about this morning. Jamey and I went to breakfast. We have a little marriage meeting that we do, and then we had our marriage meeting this morning. And something I was talking to him about was just as parents, we're all trying to figure, there's no playbook of like behavior, discipline, all, there's just a million options of things that you can do, shouldn't do, should start doing, should stop doing, all the things. And we're all just like, this podcast said to do this, but this says to do this. But something that I have found is just being as curious as possible in our conversations. And in particular, in moments where I feel like they're doing something that like a discipline moment, like, a bad behavior situation that in the moment feels like traumatizing probably for everybody, But then afterwards, when we're using our executive functioning part of our brain and we're not in fight or flight, saying, just being curious about what was going on. Hey, what was going on during that? You seemed to get, that really seemed to hurt your feelings. That really bothered you when we did X. What is it about that? And I hope that they look back and think, gosh, she just really wanted to understand me, and really tried to understand not just the good, but the bad, because behind the bad, there's something going on with all of us, really. And so that's one piece. And then Jamey and I feel like one of our values is having liturgies or things that we do that are just this repetition. And so things that we say, we light a candle at dinner and we have a thing we say, or at night, I have been saying maybe the same exact prayer over my kids since they were like itty bitty. We have a little family mission statement. There are some things I try to say over them before they go to school. And it's funny because I've heard them repeat that over like a stuffy. My same things. They repeat it over them. Or last week, Rosie said it to our dog. I was like, oh gosh, may the Lord bless and keep Dolly. So I hope that they remember, that of all the things that they're going to look back and those kind of things will be, hopefully
Absolutely.
balance out the not good.
Well, and I think like so much of success is tied to your identity and confidence and how you perceive the world. And I think if you have truth, if you believe truths about yourself, like how you believe and perceive yourself affects so much of the outcomes of how you behave and how you interact with the world. And it's like, I can't control the hard things that are going to come. I can't control their strengths, their weaknesses. And the one thing we've tried to cultivate is I want them to believe certain truths. And so part of my like on the school journey every day for the past, Rosie's now 9, is I make them say out loud, I am loved, I am beautiful, I am kind, I am smart, I am strong, I am perfect the way I am.
Aw.
And then I say, hey, what do the Ices do? And they say, we do hard things. And I say, why do you do hard things? Because hard things make us stronger. And so it's like, I can't control a lot, but if I can help them speak truth to themselves and believe truths about themselves.
Absolutely.
And you get little glimpses of them like repeating that and saying that. Like the other day, Rosie wrote a note to herself and it was like, I'm brave. And I'm like, my heart just lit up.
Yes.
Yes. She's like, I read to the whole class. I am brave. I did a good thing. It was really sweet.
That's incredible. Well, and what y'all are bringing is working in tandem because it's the ritual, the consistency. And then Melissa, as you were expressing, you're being curious, but you're helping them to be curious about themselves. Because if it were, I got disciplined for this thing, therefore I will not let myself do that thing again, which might be have a negative feeling, right? Or be jealous or would it, no, instead it's, I wonder where that came from, or I wonder what that was about. And I really try to do that too. And I'm doing it with myself instead of judging something that I would have perceived as negativity or a weakness or something. Wonder what that's about. That's interesting. And you're framing that up for them through your relationship with them that they can then model with themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all
I
are
love
both much healthier in that than I am. I need
What a
to
journey, Jamey.
cultivate that.
I also love Daily Stoic. What's something that has stood out to you that's been impactful for them or something they really grabbed onto as an important idea?
I just think it's like, what can you control and what you can't control? And so we talk a lot about like, someone was mean, this thing happened. You're like, what can you control? You can control your own actions, your own emotions. And so I think they've resonated with that. And I think like, even for me, like, again, I was saying, it's been a hard season and it's like, I've had a lot of peace in it. I feel like I had the most peace I've had in a long time. But so much of that is like, I can control what I can control. And that's like, am I showing up? Am I sleeping? Am I eating well? Am I spending time with the Lord? Am I spending time with myself? Am I working out? What am I believing and praying? It's like, I can control that. And when you do that, you can have peace. You can't control other people's reactions. You can't control these other things, but focusing on like, what are the things that are in my control? And that's how I show up and how I feel and how I behave and handle that.
Yeah.
And I think for them, it's like, that's the same thing. Like,
I can control my efforts, but not the outcome. There's an uncertainty in that again, I don't think I couldn't deal with that without faith. The right thing is going to occur and that I'm being held. But this helping the kids realize kids are going to be mean. Things will happen. We will fail. This tough stuff, that recognition and how we build resilience toward that is one of the most important lessons I think that we can teach them. And I'm like you, I'll have these moments with Hogan in the car in particular. And he's very sensitive and tends to be a little bit dramatic. I don't know where he gets. And we were leaving school. I was a few minutes late picking him up. He was not the last kid there, but he's very literal. And it was later than I had said. I'd said 5 o'clock to his teacher and it was like 5:27. And so first was mad that I was there because he wanted to keep playing. I'm like, okay, cool. We're good. Right. He's doing the aftercare thing. And then on the way home, he said, well, now because we're late, I don't get to play with the neighbors. So he lost time there. And then he went back to, well, Mommy, you were late. And so then he started getting upset about it. It was like he was finding something to be upset about and be emotional about. And I was like, okay, I know how I deal with this is going to be his internal voice. But I said, Hogan, the reason that Mommy didn't leave work on time is that I had back-to-back appointments and just gave him a little bit of part of my day. And that Mommy pays for your school. We have, as a family, we come together And we do hard things in order to have the life that we want and make sure education is prioritized. And so I brought him into a little bit of the picture of this. I want you to have your feelings. I even said, I'm like, I want you to have your feelings. And then also it's frustrating for me too, because there are a lot of things I do to sacrifice. And now you're complaining about where you're playing. I was paying for you to play somewhere.
Yeah.
But then is this developmentally appropriate for me to be having this conversation with him? I don't know. It's like, what level of reality can they handle?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, you sound way more self-control. I feel like several times in the last week, because we're hosting a Wicked party, speaking of Wicked, for our 9-year-old this weekend. And I can't tell you how many times I've said, well, I'm paying for the party, so I get to decide. So
it's kind of how it is,
yeah. She's like, because I'm thinking this and this and this. I'm like, well, but mommy's writing the check, so we don't.
I mean, it's like,
But I
what
think
your resources are.
It's a life lesson. I'm like, if you want to throw this kind of bash, we should start earning extra money, and you can totally do that.
Absolutely. And I remember my parents did, or it was my dad, wanted us to learn the value of money. And so we had this really elaborate game, basically, where you did different tasks and you earned a piece of paper that was a particular color, and you could turn in that paper and it was worth a certain amount of points for different privileges. And I remember thinking it was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. So the gamification of it all didn't work so well. I love the creativity. How do you help your kids respond to something like that in a positive way rather than feeling victimized by it, which I did. But that was part of how I responded to a lot of things.
The victim.
Yeah.
That's actually,
I have to do this.
Spring is all about fresh starts, so why not give your skin one too? If winter left your skin feeling dry and dull, it's time for a reset with a facial from Hannah Azul Korean Skincare. Myung Chong has been perfecting skin for 27 years, and her facials are the ultimate refresh. People call it the Hannah Azul Glow for a reason. And to keep that glow going, her medical-grade skincare hydrates, smooths, and revitalizes so your skin looks as fresh as the season. Ready to shake off winter and step into spring radiantly? Visit hannahazul.com to book your facial and grab your spring skincare must-haves. That's hannahazul.com, HANNAISUL.com, because glowing skin is always in season.
Yeah. But that's what, like, one of my 2025 goals is, like, I want to figure out a better chore system, reward, like, because we've tried a bunch of different things and we've done, like, but I want to figure out, anyways, that's interesting. Like the gamification, you get privileges, because I want them to understand that. Because often I'll be like, they'll do some chores and I'll say, here's some money. And then that money will just wind up on the floor or under the bed or under the,
Yeah. It's not valued.
Yeah.
Well, so what's your perspective? Do you need a more elaborate game system to learn about the value of money?
I think we need a system that we follow through with. We're good at starting the amount of like Etsy purchases of like chore charts and all the things that have been in our refrigerator. And our kids call us out. They're like, what happened to the chart? We don't mark them down anymore. And we're like, yeah. So mommy and daddy are really good at starting things. We have lots of ideas. And sometimes it becomes difficult too. They're like, when's payday?
Better. The simpler, the better. Yeah.
Yes. And then figuring out, well, and my solution to everything is like, just follow someone on Instagram who does it really well and watch their stories for a while and then like get some ideas drummed up.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if actually the girls maybe need to come up with what the next system is.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a great idea, actually, because I think we could all bring our grievances to the table, because they might say, you don't actually pay us. And we're like, but we find money in an American Girl doll backpack in the bottom of the toy trunk. So what can we...
Exactly. Where's the respect for the greenback?
How do we mitigate and come up with... And I think that's a great idea. Our kids have lots of ideas. They are very passionate about having a voice and having a seat at the table.
I think you need to do a strategic planning session for your game and start with a SWOT analysis of what has really worked well and not worked well. about previous iterations and let the girls just run with this.
Yeah.
I love it.
Start,
I
stop,
love it.
continue.
Just like at our house, continue something, continue anything.
Yes. Yes.
But Matt's a continuer, isn't he?
Yes. Oh,
He
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Sure.
he seems like steady, follows through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And our has stayed really simple. Now, Hogan's only 8 now. So I think, we'll get more sophisticated as we go. But we've always just put a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper on the inside of the pantry door. And Hogan will put a bunch of circles on it and he puts a sticker in. And then when he finishes, if we decide it's 10, because he wants this particular thing, and we've done whatever he's struggling with at that time, that's what the chart is about. So it's like positive attitude or cleaning up the house or whatever it is. But that becomes probably not how you're supposed to do it.
You're quarterly focused.
Yes, it helps us like narrow in on here's the key competencies and skills that we need to have to be successful in our household. And that's what
I
the
love
chart
it.
focus is going to be. And now Marco has her first chart for potty training.
Oh, that's cool.
see? Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so, and this actually, these kinds of things, you can decipher your child's personality and see your future in it. Hogan would never put up a sticker that he didn't earn.
Oh, really?
Never. He wouldn't even
We have
look at
one
the
of those.
sticker. Yeah,
Yeah, we have-
he wouldn't even get close to a sticker he didn't earn. Margot's in there like, boop, 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 like 30 new stickers just because they look pretty.
Oh yeah, we have one of each. We have one
Mhm.
that's like that too, and she
Yeah, I
has
had-
earn her keep, and then the other one is like,
Rosie will like
mean, I-
forge my initials,
yeah, she has.
which I respect the hustle. Like I like respect
Yeah.
the
And we'll
The
be like,
bending.
did you write that?
Yeah. Was it a good
And she'll be
fortune?
like,
it's
I
like
think it was decent. And it's funny because if you say something, she's like, I don't remember if it was me or if it was you. Like it's real.
That's an
It's like,
interesting concept. I'm just not sure. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Yeah. And so that Rosie's firstborn, so it's not the rule follower thing that you often see with the firstborn. You think it's more related to personality.
yeah, she got all of me and Melissa's extremism combined.
Yeah. She's like, rules, schmools,
Yeah.
Iron will.
Reckoned with. That's amazing.
Yeah.
She's reckoning
Future
with
leader.
me right now.
Hogan, I never had to really significantly discipline him. I mean, if he had it, Margot will not even sit in the timeout chair. Like she will not stay there. If she's going to sit there, you have to stand there with her with your hand on her. Like, okay, how do we get around this? This is going to be a whole journey.
And again, there's this hard juxtaposition in that so much of my success is because I'm like, I don't care about the rules. I think I can do it better. I'm not going to listen. Like, especially in the hierarchy of school, like so many arbitrary, dumb rules. And I'm like, I'm going to break them. I want to put the minimum amount of effort for the maximum amount of return. And so you want that, but also as the person in charge, I'm like, sit down, listen to what I'm saying and obey. I want obedience, but I'm also like, I know obedience is also not the thing that gives you success. I want independent thinking.
Right.
And so there's these two hats of like parent hat. I want to be respected and listen. I'm like, just make the night easy, please.
Yes, we're exhausted. Yeah.
But then I also want her to fight back and to push and to question because that's what got me to where I am.
That's
today.
right.
And it's what got Melissa where I am. It's like we question and we, does it have to be that way?
Yeah.
Why? There's a better way. And so that I think that's a hard piece as a parent. And I respect is a big deal to me. I'm learning that it shouldn't be as much, but I feel disrespected when she pushes back. And I'm also like, I want you to push back. Anyways, it's hard.
Yeah.
Parenting is hard.
I'm so with you on that. And I've seen that in social media too, where people are kind of encapsulating that thought, particularly for girls, that I want my daughter to obey what I say. And then in 10 years, I want her to tell a boy that, no, I don't want to do that with you, right? That independent spirit and being able to speak your own voice. And what I found is similar to what Melissa brought up is the curiosity of asking myself when I get triggered, oh, that's interesting. I'm wanting to have control. I'm wanting this to be easy. I'm wanting my life to be more comfortable, but then how can I help my child express something in a respectful way? Even like, Hogan, go put your laundry up. And he doesn't want to, is it okay for him to say, I really wish I didn't have to do that right now? Maybe that would be okay. It's like kind of the parameters of how we negotiate it.
Yeah. Still figuring that one out.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. If you figure it out and it's successful, let me know what it is.
Yeah. Because it's like homework. I fundamentally hate homework and philosophically think it's dumb. It doesn't make sense. I'm probably saying extreme things. Melissa, you're giving me the look. It's so unnecessary. It's just busy work. They're just in school all day. But then I don't believe in homework. I think it's dumb. Why are we doing this? This is like taking into our time. But then I also like, Rosie, do the homework. Please do it. But then she's like, I don't want to do it. Why am I doing this? I was at school today. And I'm like, I agree. It's a hard balance.
It is. It is. And how would Ryan Holiday address it?
Yeah.
Right? Of like, there's a fact of something that has to be done in order to be successful. There's the feelings I have about it. And like, you can't skip over the fact you have the feelings. So it's like, how can we acknowledge it and then also just do it? Melissa, what are you processing? Tell us what's happening in your beautiful brain.
I was thinking about what Jamey said, because we spent some time in our meeting breakfast this morning talking about that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what does it look like to cultivate leadership qualities that you see, and the way that those, if cultivated, she can flourish, and she has no problem being in charge of things. And so I'm like, that's a great skill, because a lot of people are scared to do that. Or, frankly, it's like they would much prefer a helper role in different arenas and environments. And although she is helpful, she doesn't mind helping while also leading the charge, which is, I think, and it's like, so gosh, I don't want to squash that, because that is going to serve her so well in so many capacities. However, she's not in charge of our house. She's not in charge of our household. And so she will be one day, but not ours right now in this season. Mm-hmm. And so just trying to figure out a way to nurture those character qualities that I respect so much and already see. And at the same time, as you said, it's like, but I even try to explain to her, I'm like, even mommy, and she's like, but you're the boss. And I'm like, but I have a board of directors. And, there's very few instances in life where you just have full autonomy and you're just walking around making unilateral decisions. So often you're not in that position. You are having to defer and collaborate and hear other people's opinion and bend and meet in the middle. And so that's something that I'm just learning in this season.
Absolutely. And it's painful. It's just like we were talking about earlier with the strength in the shadow, how we get those sharp edges rubbed off, whether it's, I had more of a people pleasing bent. So it was painful for me to suffer from not expressing myself fully and feeling thwarted in my growth. Whereas somebody else that has this natural power is going to feel the pain of making missteps or feeling really sure and then falling on your face. It's like either direction, there's going to be pain in how we course correct. And we don't want our kids to feel pain. It's good for them, just like it was good for us.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's good for us.
Exactly.
And I'm like you, Jamey, in just a season of intensity. And I know this is going to bear fruit. Like, hang in there.
I did a Facebook post last night because I've just been chewing on it. In the Lord's Prayer, he says, thy will be done. But then right after that, it's give us this day our daily bread. And so much of our prayer life, my prayer life, is asking God for things. Hey, can you do this? Hey, I want this. Here's my checklist. Give me my daily bread. Here's what I need. Here's what I need. It's like, because of our ambitions. But the idea of thy will be done, I'm submitting. And God, Jesus tells us to pray both. You're supposed to pray both of those. But I think the harder prayer for me is this idea of thy will be done. Like, I trust you in this. I have peace in this. I'm at the mercy. Like, instead of my prayers is to bend God's will, it's like I need to melt my will to whatever that is. And really trying to learn that. Because again, I think the superpower of an entrepreneur is like you try to bend the world around you, and there's good to that. But at the same time, it's like, what does it look like to rest and trust and release control and to not build your kingdom and to not make it about you? And that's the harder thing for me. That's the thing I feel like I'm learning right now. It's like, I'm just going to trust. I'm going to rest. I'm going to not assert. And it's a tricky thing. It's easier said than done.
That's right. What are you finding is helpful for you? Melissa's word limits or limitations. Mine was a little bit of a theme: ease, curiosity, and open hands. which speaks to what you're talking about, that like, I want them to be filled. I'm going to be completely honest. I want them to be overflowing. And then also I'm going to keep them open so that if it's not mine or it's not mine now, that it doesn't stay there. And the only thing I can do is when I'm getting grabby about it, discipline. Okay, open hands. It's like that, having that visual for me is like, okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Is that open hands analogy. Is resting in this is happening for a reason. This is different than the desired outcome I would like to have, but I'm going to have peace in that. Because peace is not something that you accidentally stumble upon. I think there's an active choice in it. I think peace also it is also contingent on how you're taking care of yourself and the things that you're doing and things, which again, going back to things that you can't control and can't control. But there's an active choice that doesn't happen on accident. I think, talking about faith, I think peace comes in proximity to God and connection with him, which again doesn't happen on accident. You have to pursue it and be met there. Yeah. And so I think, again, that handedness, if your default is close-handedness, then there's an active action of releasing it. I like that analogy.
Even if it's helpful, and please share with me ways that because to me, it's this gentle discipline of, I just got triggered around something and I'm going to trust.
That is so good. That's really encouraging. And I think Jamey and I are just both right. We're like in the thick of that exact concept right now.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a little, okay, the knuckles are getting white. How do we open our hands a bit? And I even had someone who, and I can't stop thinking about it, and she's older, a woman at our church, they're a successful family. Their kids are all adult and thriving and live nearby, and grandkids are nearby, and everyone's happy and healthy. And I'm like, tell me everything. What did you do? How did you create this? And I just so appreciated her advice. She was like, my advice to you is just do not be afraid to throw things in reverse. She was like, there's no set thing. She was like, there's no reason to stay on a course just because you're on the course. She's like, you're always evaluating, what does this kid need? What does my marriage need right now? Is this job fulfilling, or, do we need this amount of money or do we not? Are we in this house because it serves us or does it not? She was talking about instances where she had to switch schools and things, but also she was like, ministry or whatever, she's like, don't be afraid to throw things in reverse if it's the only approval that you need is that if it's good for your family and you feel like it's something that God ordained, whatever that looks like, but you've thought through it, you've had counsel and wisdom, and it's not just irrational. But and I just thought that was so freeing and so life-giving, and I can't stop thinking about it. And so I keep writing it in my journal. There's not a reverse I'm looking for. And I feel like it's very antithetical to like a midlife crisis. Obviously, that has its own implications, but just permission from somebody who's older that you respect and you see their family and you want to emulate what that looks like, and that being their advice, which was so encouraging to me, because I feel like there's in your 20s, you're sort of building, right? You're figuring out who you are, trying on things, you're risking things. And in your 30s, you're sort of establishing who you are, and you're still figuring that out on some level. But in your 40s, for us, which we are, you feel rooted. You feel like, okay, we have deep roots now, so there's no going back. And that's just not true.
Yeah, that's right. And probably what we look for when we ask questions like you asked of her and seeking out is a formula. And she was basically like, there's no formula. It's in doing what is right for you, exploring things, continuing to be curious, and following the path that God puts in front of you.
Yes, exactly. And that was it just felt like permission we didn't sign on the dotted line. There's just opportunity, and it's okay to reflect and change course if needed.
Thank you so much for I feel like we need like a parenting series. Could we come up with, and we don't have to know anything. We just lob these questions out there and see what happens in future conversations.
Yeah, it kind of turned into the parenting.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I love it.
We're noticing in how hustle impacts our kids and what we want our kids to learn. But I appreciate that. I think we stepped toward that because it's on our hearts. And we're wanting to do this in a way that really, we want to be leaders and business people who set a great example for our kids and help them be the best that they can be. And not
Absolutely.
a performative way, right? In a way that they contribute and they enjoy their own lives. So maybe we'll have to figure out that formula and share it with everybody.
Yes. And that's part of
crack the code.
legacy, That's what, at least how I feel, is like my legacy for so long, I just thought of my legacy as the vocation that I'm in. And is it making an impact? Is it making difference? And now I'm starting to see the both and of legacy being, yes, the communal impact. And that's something I desire, but also the impact inside my home. And what does that legacy look like? And it's sort of growing in the pie chart of significance, and just figuring out what that looks like.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for joining The Great Noticing. And thank you to everybody for listening as we had the amazing Melissa and Jamey Ice join us today. We can't wait for future conversations. Everybody, please like and share our content, and we can't wait to hear what you're noticing. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Great Noticing podcast. Don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And for more information and to keep up with Marianne and Emily, visit thegreatnoticingpodcast.com. And remember, what are you noticing lately?